maybe consider any motions arising from the camera session?
Yes. There is a recommended resolution for administration that was sent via email. If somebody is prepared to make a motion arising from our closed session. Thank you.
I'll make the motion that council direct in administration to review the county's investment attraction strategy and evaluate the strategic strength for sector focus on energy and bring options back to council for consideration. Got the tongue twister.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, CAO Henderson. Now we will move to 2.34.
Good afternoon, Council. Matt B. from Administration, here to present a notice of motion for Council's consideration to rescind motion CM 2021-0731 and withdraw a land use bylaw amendment application as read in the recommendation. We were directed by Council to propose or to evaluate this application due to area residents and negative feedback with respect to a council-directed land use bylaw amendment as outlined in the report. The county will consider evaluating or continue to explore options for future transfer sites for residents of the community if directed to. I can field any questions, but I can turn it over to the local councillor as well. Thanks.
Any questions?
Being a councillor of the area, I have received a lot of feedback on this. I've been at a lot of people's homes looking at their perspective on it, future considerations, immediate considerations of it. And I can safely say that the community does not want to have a waste transfer site in that area, which happened to be the RV storage site at Lake Summerfield. So therefore, I'd like to put a motion forward that council rescind motion CM 2021-07-31 and direct administration to withdraw land use bylaw amendment application LU 2021-007. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 2.35.
Good afternoon, Council. Matt from Administration here to present the High Eagle Campground building setbacks. Our Community Services Coordinator will be coming in and taking over. But just for Council's information as well, we did circulate several supplemental documents as well. You have hard copies of the site plan from 2005 to 2020. With mapping layers from GIS removed from the river. You also have a digital virtual copy as well of the buildings close to the riverbank that obviously you can see the setbacks closed in as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave to present.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, Council. I have some other maps that kind of compare the buildings. If I pass those around, that'd be great, thanks. I didn't include in the report a little bit of background that the High Eagle Campground is leased with 3 parties involved with that lease, the Rosebud Lions. The county owns the land, and the lease has the rent go to the Lions Club in Rosebud. And it's a 4.3 acre site just outside of Rosebud as well. So when we were going through this process with the operator of High Eagle, with the development permits, the building setbacks do not meet the land use bylaw, so the requirement for variance. So that's why it's coming to council as being the landowner. Kind of have a few hats here, landlord as well as landowner as well. And then MPC is the approving authority as well. So lots of hats on this one. So So there's a few options that we went through. One of the requirements as part of the land use bylaw for the setback is to have a report done, a geotechnical report, to make sure that the ground that the buildings are on will support it. We did get a quote for that, and it was estimated at $100,000, which is quite substantial and would be a burden on the operator, obviously, as well. So we kind of went through some of the options in the report, and since these buildings are temporary, they're all temporary, they're not on foundations or anything like that, they're all temporary buildings, that a variance maybe could be considered. So kind of I can answer any questions, I guess, based on the report.
Any questions for Dave?
How difficult would it be to move them?
The washroom facilities do have a tank setback far enough away from the creek and the river. So that would be the most difficult one, because there would be plumbing and some electrical involved. I think the other buildings maybe have electrical as well, so it wouldn't be terribly difficult, but there'd be some costs involved for sure.
Could you hazard a guess at what it would cost?
I guess that would depend how far back they would go. If we could still make the septic tank work.
Let's say if you said 100 feet.
100 feet, it wouldn't work. There'd be some substantial costs with putting a new tank, and I'm not sure the size or whatever, so it'd be difficult to say.
Before we get too far along, I got a couple comments to make. It's not a river. Severn Creek. Severn Creek. Yeah, it's Severn. Yeah, so you can see the Rosebud River on some of these pictures, on the one on your computer for sure, not the ones I handed out. Yeah, that one. So the Severn Creek is built by the PFRA. The creek was a little basin, natural water course. And the drainage area was up past the 564. So it was prone to flooding in its day. Since I was a little kid, before they built a dam there, PFRA. It's dammed at Severn Dam. It's controlled. As dams are, it was put in as a control structure to accumulate the water, the runoff, and release it at opportune times. And every farmer along the way had a dugout to fill for livestock. That's what it was built for. Since then, the PFRA is more or less disbanded, and Alberta owns the infrastructure. I'm not sure who, if it's Alberta Environment or who comes down there. About a few years ago, they went and they drained that lake, most of it anyway, and put in new headworks and stuff. That was only half a dozen years ago. So the structure itself is, I would say, sound. The chance of flooding down that creek is from the south. I can't say nil. I mean, there's always a possibility the dam will wash out. But dam washes out, we got bigger problems than two washrooms on the creek. Now, a few years ago, that whole campground was underwater. It wasn't because of Severn Dam. That was all underwater. The whole campground was underwater. The Rosebud River flooded. And it almost made it up to the bridge on the highway. That close. One long-term resident that lived there his whole life, 80+ years, close to 90 now, has never seen a flood like that, ever. But everything on that property was underwater. They went and tied down their picnic tables so they wouldn't float away. But that was the Red Deer River that flooded. There was no running water in the Severn Creek that would create erosion. And when I talked to staff, that's why I asked them, with like images going back, I would have liked if we could do like the cartoons do, clear see through, and you can see how much that bank has moved. I seen the pictures here. I'd say that bank is not moved. It's not a deep bank, and it has some standing water in it, but it's not washing. That road, that building was put in. This is an original Alberta campground from when you were kids. Kananaskis was full of them at the time. They were all over the province. Alberta got out of the campground business and they gave it to the county. But the proviso that we don't sell it. If we sell it, we have to give the money back to the Alberta government. County of the day, council did not want to look after it. They offered it to the Rosebud Lions Club. They looked after it, they can, whatever profits they can derive from it. So the Rosebud, when you look at the picture there, was a couple outhouses there and a well. They maintained the outhouses and the well. They put a sign, it was a well, you could drink out of it, but they put a sign up, it's not potable water, just to protect themselves. And Rosebud put up a little stall there. They fill it up with firewood. Had a little stand there they could put in, I think it was $5 for camping overnight. And they moved the grass, and they would, at the end of the year, all told, they would get garner about $6,000, $7,000, if I remember right. Don't quote me on it. So then these present people, they come. They would like to develop it into a campground that would hold more than the dozen people that Rosebud was able to do in the trees. So after lengthy discussions, it was determined that the county would allow him to develop the campground from the Rosebud Lions Club for the $6,000 or $7,000 that they're missing, because this money went straight into Rosebud. That's the arrangement we have. So we have the three landowners. There's only one landowner, it's the county, but we had Rosebud involved because we gave it to them. We had the new occupants involved because they wanted to lease it. So they developed it into, I don't know how many stalls there, guessing. And they've been running a campground. So they have water services there, power services, no sewer system. So a few years ago, the county, there was another campground across the highway from this one on the golf course, and it had a campground too. It was probably more sites than this one, just as many. They had no sewer services either. So the county put in a sandy dump station. Just can't quite see it on the picture here, on the other side of the river, on the same road the seed plant's on. And they put in a darn nice facility there. So my concern is if we make this onerous on these people, they've invested their money and now they're trying to recoup it, and we add another whatever onto it, it's going to make it difficult for them to move. And I'm not a hydrologist or a engineer, geotechnical guy, but that bank hasn't moved. The only concern that flood comes, the thing's going to wash in and somebody could be on the washroom. If it floods again, there's nobody on that spot unless they were equipped with hip raiders and had a rope to tie down the floating away campgrounds. I can't see it flooding there and washing while it's being occupied. They have campsites all along that creek, and on the other side too. I believe they have tenting spots and whatnot. You got to walk across. No bridges going across it. And being the fact that if it floods, the whole property will flood. It's flat. Well, why make them move it to another spot on there for a setback? It's going to flood just as easy there as it's going to flood. It didn't flood from the creek, it flooded from the river. So come up from the river, and I think that original building was there, and it's kind of built up, but flood water, I don't know if it run in the door, but it was right there. So me personally, I don't have a problem where them buildings are situated. We're worried about flooding. If we're worried about soil erosion, and there's one picture here, I don't see that much brush there. And I don't know if that was after the flood. When I look on the picture there, it looks like all the shrubbery's dried out. We had some dry years, but on the other pictures, it's green. And we have pictures here that it hasn't moved. We can monitor that site, see if it ever does erode. But I can't see it. They don't leave down big shots of water. It's more, if they were to leave down a big shot of water, it takes all the dugouts out and defeats the purpose of that infrastructure. And if you ever watch up at Severn Dam, they have a release there, and you can watch it right from the road. You got little steps to prevent the erosion. It's not that much water that comes down there. It's not. It's about like our bigger irrigation ditches, not like big canals. It's just an irrigation ditch. That's slow, meandering type river. There's no washing involved to it. So I have a concern about making them move it. And it's not a deep fall either. But I think we can monitor that in flood season and see if it is eroding or not. Because if wherever we move it on that property, it'll have the negative effect of eating up camp spots, I believe. There goes their ability to make a return on their investment. Been good. They're the only campground left in Rosebud unless something happens across the road. Any questions? I'll answer them best I can.
Well, just to admit it, like, is there any liability to the county? Because if they can get insurance for this, the way it is, and we're not involved in it, I'm with Glenn here that we don't. Like, I just worry about if this building flips over, I can't imagine, like, how much. If it's $100,000, how many years you'd have to, like, there's no way you'd make a return on investment of $100,000. So are we far enough separated from liability? Like, if the worst thing that happened is somebody's sitting on a crapper and the thing tips over. If you got a paraplegic, it'd be a hell of a story. But anyways, the liability at that point, like, is the county at all liable can we be found liable at all?
I can probably answer this one. I would assume we would be. It's a building on our land. We understand where the setbacks are now. We understand there's danger with it. We could be held partly liable, I believe. I could ask legal for sure, but I'm almost certain that we would be.
Just to supplement Brian's comments, we know about the issues, and we're talking about it right now, and the potential for injury public safety.
If we're going to discuss too much about liability, we should possibly consider closed session under advice from health officials potentially. I would defer to administration, your comfort level.
We could. I think all the information's there anyways. Yes. I'm not sure how much more discussion we need on it, but
just depending where it goes, I'm just saying.
Always a potential for liability. But we have to, I believe, my history of the place, and I've been going there for a long time, that bed has not moved. Not going to move. Those trailers that are there, they're like an ATCO trailer, washroom type thing. I can't see it. No, I don't want to be liable either, but I can't see it washing out 50 feet of bank in an event unless the dam breaks. If that dam breaks, I don't know who's liable then. It holds water. It's a perfectly functioning structure that is doing what it was designed to do. Yeah, we could be liable, but at the same sense, you're going to leave it wash away till it's halfway under it before you decide to move it or not.
You know, and we assume liability, some form of liability in anything we do, right? We have ice arenas that theoretically, if somebody were to get grievously injured on that ice arena, we'd be sued for that, right? Because so we assume a liability on everything. I think this is minimal, so I will, whatever the councillor in the area wants to do, I will vote his way.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I saw Donna first, and then we'll go from there.
I just want to know, is it 50 feet away? Like, I can't tell from this picture.
So the actual distances are on page 161 for each building. And then can you just clarify the setbacks where those are from, just for council? The setback requirements.
The setback requirements are 100 feet, and each building,
Oh, I see. Okay.
each building's on there what they are, and those were provided by the operator in the application, the development permit application.
And the 100 feet is from our land use bylaw.
100 feet from the land use bylaw, correct.
And are there AEP requirements for setbacks to a creek? Do we know?
30-meter setback.
So consistent with our land use bylaw approximately. Like our land use bylaw would meet that.
I was just going to say that I'm most concerned about the two washrooms. 7 feet and 4.5 feet away from the bank is worrisome to me. And the other washroom 13 feet away. Like seems risky to me.
So with regard to liability, the Hamlet of Rosebud falls under the county's jurisdiction as well, is that correct? So the question I would have then is, well, there's two questions actually. Would the liability for this campground be any different than for something that the county would own within the Hamlet of Rosebud? And if the answer is it would be the same, then there's not much point worrying about it. The other question is, because we know it's not meeting a provincial setback and we choose to do nothing about it, does that then increase our liability? That would be the only question. I'm kind of with Glenn, as long as it's not going to, we just don't want to get sued for $1 billion down the road, and I'm using hyperbole there.
Through the Reeve, we would have to confirm, but there's multi-layers here that the manager of planning was just talking about, resources protecting of watersheds and all that in the provincial. That obviously supersede, but the thing about it too, in my mind, from the planning perspective, is that our bylaws are consistent with it. And so from the risk, from a planning perspective, is that we know about the risks and our bylaws are consistent. And so that just opens up a can of worms ethically and professionally based on what we know about that, right? So that's where we're at. And I think, should we proceed and kind of keep it at bay, it would be wise for for staff and administration to look at the legal implications from that aspect if we continue down this path.
That's what I was thinking of. I wonder, can we defer this and get that information first? I would feel a lot more comfortable with it. I don't want to see the poor guy have to move his stuff, but we also have to protect the county and the staff.
There's also a consideration too. These aren't dwellings. They're seasonable campgrounds that can be evacuated on a moment's notice, and they can be moved. And setbacks on most of them buildings, I don't know if we can actually find a building site on the property, between the highway and the rivers. Not a big site. Yeah. So if you take that into consideration when you're doing it, what the building site actually is, it being not permanent, but it's a sound. Yeah, flood season, there's no trailers there. It's when the river's flooding, it's not camping season yet. And if it washes and the thing's imminent of falling in, somebody's going to move it. And if they don't, well, they'll have a bigger mess, right? And if the county were to, maybe you could say, well, inspect it yearly prior to camping season and see if anything's washed away or if it's a danger. I think that would mitigate a lot of the risk because it's not going to cave in mid-seas.
That's a good point, Glenn. If we choose to do something and we put mitigation strategies in place to make sure that the thing that we don't want to have happen, that's typically considered favorably if something goes sideways.
Is this Rosebud River part of the floodplain management of the province? Because they're supposed to have a study coming out here soon. It was supposed to be last year for the 1 in 100 year or 200 year, and building within that floodplain, they were going to set a standard that you could or could not. I don't even know if the Rosebud's on there.
I'd have to check, but most of those have not been released yet, and we don't have a timeline for their release at this point.
Because I know, like in Manitoba, they're looking at 300-year flood.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So a lot of questions have been raised. I think my preference would be to defer this until we have some further information on liability, cost for moving, if there is even an actual site to move to, what that might look like, explore that with the operator. One of my concerns, I don't think we can see how things go this year or last year, because what we are seeing, you just have to look west and you can see that we're seeing unusual events. We're seeing 1 in 100 year floods. They're saying we could see 1 in 50 year floods the potential's always there. You could see a 1 in 50 year flood or 1 in 300 year flood 3 years in a row. You can never predict when you're going to see very rare or very extreme flooding. We are seeing some increase in disasters in North America and Alberta specifically. I think we have 3 or 4 of the top 10 costing disasters for North America in the last 10 years, maybe. Insurance is another, that was a good key consideration. If they're handling the insurance themselves, just ensuring that would cover this. I don't see a ton of value in a geotechnical, because I'm assuming a geotechnical would measure up against, would compare to, I can't see a geotechnical overriding provincial legislation in terms of setbacks. In terms of the question around liability, absolutely, you always have liability whether you're aware or not, but we have a responsibility here for due diligence. Without question, when something is brought to our attention, we can't ignore that possibility. And in litigation, often municipalities are targeted because we do have financial means, and individuals can consider that in the event. I agree, there was a comment, and Councillor Custer made it as well. The majority of the facilities are portable, so perhaps that would mitigate some of the cost to moving them. I think we really have to do our due diligence with this. So I would support whoever raised the point of deferring it, have administration bring it back with some further information, perhaps some advice from officials, some legal, and just see. Yes.
So I will move that we delay the request for decision on this matter until we get some information back from the administration regarding A, our legal liability, and B, what mitigation we could put in place to demonstrate the effectiveness of us granting a variance.
There's a motion on the floor. Any questions or comments or discussion? Shannon, did you get the motion? Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's okay.
It's why it's recorded.
Technology. Last chance for questions. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.36, completion policing report.
Away? No, you're fine. No.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm just in here today. The RCMP detachments in our area we have, for those our new councillors, we have 5 different RCMP detachments which service Wheatland County, which include Bicyker, Drumheller, Bassano, Gleason, and Strathmore. And every one of them, of course, have different events and so on and so forth that happen into their areas. Some are busier, some are not. The detachments, or I should say 4 out of our 5 detachments, will provide sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly reports. The one that's presented today is a quarterly from Gleason RCMP, and it's a little bit more detailed than their monthly reports. So and there's no representative from the Gleason detachment here to speak to anything, but I may be able to answer some questions if there is anything.
And I believe all of our detachment commanders will at regular intervals come into council so that when we have questions, they do liaise with their peace officers on a regular basis as well. And they're always available if there's a significant issue. I know that they would be happy to come and meet with council at any time if that's required. But we do have that opportunity to meet with them on a regular basis as well, particularly important when we're setting priorities. These reports are excellent because they do show the trends as well. So, are there any questions regarding the report?
These statistics are for the whole detachment, including their designation stats. It's not just our rural.
I believe they did break it down to just Wheatland County, but I'm going to suggest...
Typically, they are just Wheatland County.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that's the way it is. I know Strathmore for sure does break theirs down, but Gleason, I'm not sure if they do break theirs down.
Any other questions? Motion to accept.
I'll move that report be approved as presented.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.37, Township Road 232 review.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair. Chris Perman, Senior Peace Officer. Just some background that in August, Council directed administration to bring forward a report on Township 232 with some history, some background, engineering, speeds and enforcement action, and this is a summary thereof. So the road is a 2-lane undivided roadway. It spans approximately 23 kilometers from Highway 817 to Highway 1. The road at one point was paved from Highway 817 to around Range Road 242, and the rest was gravel. And then in, I believe it was 2015 and 2016, it was completed and was paved the remainder of the way from Range Road 242 to Highway 1. When that was completed, the engineering report was done, and at the time it was completed, the speed limits on that road were 100 kilometers an hour from Highway 817 east to just before Nemaker Corner, Range Road 243. Then it was 80 kilometers an hour the rest of the way for the remainder of the pavement and on the gravel portion to Highway 1. When it was paved, those speed limits remained the same until I believe it was February 7th, 2017, Council did pass a bylaw, number 2016-32, raising the speed limit on the entire roadway, to 90 kilometers an hour from Highway 1 to 0.5 kilometers west of Range Road 232 and 0.5 kilometers east of Range Road 234, so just over top of Hammer Hill Road, was 90, and then that version down to 80. And then in April of 2019, Council passed a motion increasing the speed limit on the entire roadway of Township 232 to 100 kilometers an hour. And then in 2019, Council asked for an engineering report based on just the Hammer Hill area of Township 232. And at that point, the recommendation by the engineering, which is attached, was to keep the speed limit at 100 kilometers an hour with cautionary 80 signs near the top of Hammer Hill, just to remind you, because there is a slightly hidden intersection in that area. And then in August of 2019, as part of Bylaw 2019-20, which is traffic control bylaw, the speed limit was decreased on Township 232 from 100 kilometers an hour to 80 on the section between Range Road 244 and Range Road 241, and the remainder was left at 100 kilometers an hour. As part of the research we were doing, we had operations put out traffic counters at several different locations and several different times for 1 week periods over the span of a couple of months. And in the numbers here show, like on Township 232 near Range Road 232, which is just west of Highway 1, there was 1,165 vehicles, and the 85th percentile speed was 111 kilometers an hour, and the average speed 93 kilometers per hour. And the 85th percentile speed is one of many engineering factors they use when determining speed limits, and what it usually means is that 85% of the vehicles traveling that area will be traveling that speed limit, and 15% will be traveling there or below. And then moving forward, Township 232 near Range Road 240 in the 100 kilometer an hour zone, 85th percentile speed was 112, average 96. Township 232 near Range Road 233 in the 80 zone, the 85th percentile speed 105, the average speed of 92. Then west of Range Road 243 in the 80 zone, 85th percentile speed was 102, average of 87. And then on Township 232 near Range Road 250, the 85th percentile was 109, and the average speed was 97. Now, I noted in here, too, that the highest recorded speed of those areas in that whole time was 154 kilometers per hour. That is an extreme, and if I was to bet money, I'd say it was a police car. You know, honestly, looking at the laws of averages, people aren't traveling that fast down that road. As part of that as well, Protective Services, we went and conducted targeted speed operations in the 80 zone between August and October, and 23 violation tickets were issued for exceeding the speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour, and the average speed in that zone was 107 kilometers per hour. And so moving forward, the 2015 report and the 2019 report comment about speed limits need to be consistent with prevailing topography, engineering projects, and so on and so forth. And they also talk about running speed. And I didn't really define running speed, but running speed is basically defined as the speed that most people feel comfortable traveling down a road at. And if speed limits are put too far away from what's considered the running speed, it puts a lot more people in violation. And if it's placed too far away, then a lot more people are abiding by it. What this also does is it causes confusion and can place an unnecessary burden on law enforcement. That's a quote from an AMEX report of 2015. And then talking further, it talks about speed limits being a traffic operation rather than a geometric design, but geometric design must be considered in determining posted speeds. And in the Alberta Transportation Highway Geometric Design of 2018 say that most drivers in Alberta will drive somewhere between the posted speed and 10 kilometers higher when traffic conditions are favorable. As we know, the biggest lie anybody ever tells is I never speed. Most people are doing anywhere within 10 to 15 kilometers of the higher than the posted speed limits. I'm going to say most because obviously that is not 100% true, but the 85th percentile would say that a lot of people are traveling within 10 to 15 kilometers over that posted speed limit. Another thing that was brought up was the increase in commercial traffic on Township 232. I did have the occasion to actually stop a few of the commercial transport trucks that were traveling down that road. Part of the reason that they had switched to that is when Alberta Transportation reduced the speed limit on Highway 901 through the Siksika Reserve to 80 kilometers an hour. It was an unintended consequence is now that because this is 100 mixed with an 80 zone, it's a nice road, it's clear. More and more transport trucks were taking that as a shortcut between Calgary and Brooks. And I will say, all of the transport trucks that we saw on that road abided by the speed. We had no issuances of any traffic violation tickets to any commercial transport, like 5-axle, so transport, commercial van trailer, Super Bs, farm equipment, so on and so forth. We never did see any of those in excess of more than 15% of the posted speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour. And so, yeah, the options to consider would be to, obviously lots of options is to leave the current speed limit as it is with 100 with the 80 zone. Council could adjust the speed limit of Township 232 to 100, adjust the entire township to 90, or adjust the entire township to 80. I mean, but I would say that consistency is important. My also concern is that keeping and reducing and so on and so forth does, as I said before, place an unreasonable burden on enforcement, because it has the appearances that we are trying to target and generate revenue from these areas rather than look at it as a safety concern. And we are not revenue generators in protective services, and Wheatland County has never been that way. We enforce based on safety concerns. So just another thing to consider. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the fulsome report. It's really helpful. As a councillor of the area, and because we have two new councillors, very brief context. What preceded this request to administration were several letters of concern that initially I'd received from ratepayers. As sort of those concerns were expressed on social media, I also did hear some counter perspectives where people were happy with the speed limit on the road or would like to see that 80 kilometer an hour piece removed. That was done in response to some safety concerns from multiple residents in the area, including 2 school bus drivers who had a couple of those kind of vertical curves that were impacting visibility and entering the road safely. My request to council is if council might consider some of the correspondence that I received, as well as some correspondence, one piece for sure that went directly to administration. We did reference that we would request an opportunity for the ratepayers to address council with their concerns. So rather than me bringing their concerns to you, sort of like going back to what Councillor Kester was referencing, obviously this isn't a public hearing situation, but rather than me trying to relay the different perspectives, it might be a good opportunity, particularly given that we've had some changeover on the council, to our procedure bylaw under 8.8 does have a provision for a public input session that council could schedule, where we could allow the ratepayers who have provided correspondence or who have an interest in the speed of the road, whether it be a concern or for supporting maintaining speed limits, to be heard. One complaint that I've had is that when we dropped that one speed limit to 80, I do have a ratepayer that was concerned that their concerns were not heard on a different section of the road the day that we made that decision. And I completely agree with everything that Officer Perman is saying. This is not to generate revenue at all, and I do not want that perception. This is essentially balancing the same liability and responsibility that we were just referencing, with balancing that with operational efficiency and utilizing the road to to what it was built to, and having efficient transportation networks. But that cannot be, that can't compromise safety. And I think it is outlined here. There are 5 sections of the road, and I realize this is so complex. There's so many considerations in setting a speed limit. Actually, maybe it's no.
So can I clarify, Amber, your ratepayers were concerned, they wanted more of the road to be 80, or I don't understand what
There wasn't, one was a request to decrease the speed limit to 80. Actually, a couple of people have requested that. From my own personal perspective, there is no data that would back reducing it to 80. I couldn't support that, even though I've had that request from a couple of ratepayers. The engineering reports would not support anything below 90. I believe there's 5 sections in the 2015 engineering report. And so I'll just really briefly explain. There's 5 sections where there's vertical curves, hills, we'll just call them hills. It would have cost a lot more money to bring those hills down to increase line of sight. And so out of fiscal efficiency, I think they were low. I think they were brought down somewhat, but not, they were brought down a lot, absolutely. But by the one engineering standard, only to a 90 km/h speed limit. Officer Perman did an excellent job of outlining kind of the iterations of speed limits that we've had. We can't necessarily consider, in my opinion, like the volume of the traffic, although there was actually a number of people have raised the concern about like what that does to our maintenance costs. And so I might look to administration in terms of that. I know it was raised at our previous discussion in council as well. Like, just does that impact the road? How well is it built? Can it maintain? I don't know if our traffic counts can delineate by axle, like by how many transport trucks or commercial vehicles there are.
Through the chair, there are some on the sheets of the class counts and stuff. It does break it down to small, medium, and large, but unfortunately it doesn't define what small, medium, and large are.
But that kind of gives a sense. The large would be...
Could be anywhere from a pickup truck to a transport truck.
Oh, okay.
My concern, and at the time we built the road, it was for an artery road for the area. There was grain terminals being built, and we got people driving basically through the county to deliver grain. Now we got terminals at both corners of the county. We've got grain moving from far away as Hannah comes through our county to some of this. So that's what it was built for. And we had some company come in and ratepayers and saying there's more trucks on the road now that weren't there since the speed limit was lowered on 901. They're coming around because they can go faster. My question at the time was, is this increased traffic impacting our route? Now, I know had instruction from, remember a previous officer we had here, name escapes me. He was your partner for a while, Chris. Yeah, Guler. He give us a presentation on what speed and weight and axles do to a road. And that was what I was kind of hoping for, is these trucks doing 100 and the increased volume, is it wearing down the life capacity of our road? That's not our traffic that's doing it, right? It's coming from traffic bypassing the 901. And that's my concern there, yeah.
So through the chair, if I may, we started recently, most likely, and a lot of places have started building the roadways up to provincial highway grade for those reasons whatsoever. And if I'm not mistaken, obviously I'm not an engineer, so I don't understand the engineering reports myself. But my understanding is that the base and the paving of that road were built to primary highway standards, so they should be able to handle the amount of traffic on it.
So just to further clarify my take on Officer Guler's report, it's not only the weight of the vehicle, it's the axles and the speed and the recovery period of the road. So it depends on what grade it's built to, how it can recover all these axles floating over it. So if you don't think there's much of an impact, well, then it kind of throws that away for me.
Yes, through the chair. It really, because I would agree with you 100% on some of our chip sealed roads and some that weren't built to highway grade. Absolutely, there could be deflection problems when it comes to loaded vehicles, which is why we do monitor weights on those roads as well, and we ban them to 75%, 90%, some of them year round based on that, because we want to protect the substructure of that roadway. With them being built up to the provincial highway grade, quite honestly, it'd be the same as driving down Highway 21, is the ability to handle the deflection in the roads and stuff like that.
Okay. So my next query, you said the mean average speed on that road. To me, that's a safety issue I'd never thought of before. What is the average speed limit on there? Maybe that should be closer to what our speed limit is to provide a safety margin for the traveling public. We don't need to have people going faster than the mean, maybe lower, I don't know. I was interested in that comment.
I think through the chair, what happens is if there's too much confusion and delineation from consistency, nobody follows anything.
Right.
And that's where we run into real problems, especially with the perception of the speed trap cash cows. We see it in a lot of other municipalities and so on and so forth, where part of the reason why photo radar has been banned in a lot of areas, because a lot of municipalities were putting it in places that weren't required for safety concerns, but they knew people were going to fly past them. When the speed limits are inconsistent and what most people will think unreasonable based on the conditions and the engineering and stuff, they just don't follow. And so we want to try and make it, like I was saying about the running speed, is to make them as close as possible. Of course, I'm definitely not an expert in any of this. I'm just a guy who's done enforcement for 25 years, and I can see from many different roads I've traveled and how the traffic reacts. Most people will be doing a steady speed. You're going to have maybe 5-10% going a lot faster than what the speed limit is, and that's the ones we catch.
Well, I use that road, and I often wonder why it is that speed limit is dropping, especially when it was up and down, up and down, up and down, drove me crazy. I mean, you want to sort of set your cruise control and just go. And that section there, to me, I meant to drive it today to see, but it just doesn't seem like a dangerous part of the road. I'd like to hear from the ratepayers to see what they...
Yeah, it's not the largest vertical curve there for sure, but there are line of sight. So what was happening is when you had traffic going at 100 kilometers an hour, and because of where the curves are and the driveways are, when it's a hidden driveway, like essentially the issue is you've got traffic running this way and this way. So if you're pulling out on the blind corner, like on a hidden driveway with a vertical curve, you may be coming into traffic here. Something could, like a vehicle. Now, sometimes the taller vehicles can actually see better because they have more line of sight than like a typical vehicle, truck or car. But you've got a vehicle, say you come out of your driveway here, you turn here, and you have a vehicle crest that vertical curve at 110 kilometers an hour because they're doing their plus 10, that I know lots of people do. There would be liability or a higher probability of a collision just because of the rate of speed and reaction times and that traffic coming on. I would really, really implore council to support me in my request for a public input session. We did discuss this during the council meeting. Look at the date. Whatever day this direction was given, on August 24th. Council on that day had discussed as well. I know we had discussed public engagement in terms of that. A simple way to do that would be to schedule that for a future council meeting. Make it open. Anyone with concerns or anyone from any perspective, whether it's to raise the speed limit to who knows what or lower it, then we can hear from that, hear those positions, balance that with what you're saying in terms of setting speed limits is consistent with everything I've learned as I did kind of a deep dive into this. We obviously have competing principles and factors to consider in this. Different councillors may prioritize different considerations or different factors, and that's fine, that's democracy. But I really think it would be unfair for us not to hear from those ratepayers with concerns. Yeah, I think that would be the best thing. And then just if administration can confirm, I appreciate what you're saying about the quality of the road. If we can just confirm that that's the case, because I know that's been a strong question that's been raised to me. Yeah.
I can support your request, Amber, but on the condition that Officer Perman has a presentation at it.
Yeah, that's
you
a
said
good
the
idea.
road is built up to standards. That was a question on our last thing. You said, I never heard this mean speed before. I think that's relevant for the public to hear. I think your presentation today was excellent. I think it merits a a redo going with public here so they can hear what we're hearing and then add it to their. Sorry, I wanted to call you a counselor. I
understand what you're saying.
Constable was the word I tried to say.
I never have a problem with public coming here and talking to us. But also as an area councillor that deals with a lot of things. This previous one that we just dealt with, I probably could have had 100 people come in here and do the same thing. I took it upon myself to bring it to council to try to rectify those concerns without her filling up the gallery with people that are going to take time out of their day. And because I'm going to say day, because a lot of these people do work and it's hard for them to get here. So I would just as soon an email works, letters work just as well to me. It means the same thing. So a lot of people that are in this county are working during the day, and for them to come here to do that, it takes a lot of their income away. So I'm always, and you know, Strathmore, they meet in evenings and stuff. I've had that request from lots of people, but as our job is to represent the people. So, you know, I take your word. Yeah.
Incredibly good point. And I think I'm with you. Like, I would put the same weight on an email, like written correspondence, an email or a letter, as I would too if they do have the capacity to come. The reason I do ask just for the public input session is because, particularly because at our last council meeting, when we addressed this, we did discuss that. And it was in one letter, just from a ratepayer that had sent in like an inquiry to administration as well. But excellent point that if there's correspondence, I would ask the council weigh that as well, because you're right, there are limitations to people's ability to either be here in person or even engage through teleconference if you are working in that type of thing. So I would put a motion on the floor, and I'm going to ask for December 21st just because there is a chance that I may not be able to attend our first council meeting in December, and I would like to be here. If we could schedule a public input session regarding speed limit for Township Road 232 for our December 21st council meeting. And if
just one consideration that council may want to consider prior to putting this forward is just the method of public input session. So this room has a fire capacity of 75 people. So right now we'd have to limit that to 25. So I was just doing the math here. So we have 7 councillors, probably 5 to 6 administration would sit in. So then we're down to 12 maximum seating. So it might be good, even if it's not the December 21st meeting, it might be good to maybe even try to facilitate it at the second meeting in January. Just something to consider, because it's very important to get as many people as you want to participate or can participate in this public input session, and they're allowed to see the presentation, have their input, and hear other input as well. It's just something to consider prior to passing that motion.
Yeah, excellent point. Is the January 4th meeting good for you or no?
So the first meeting in January is the 11th.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
I haven't updated my calendar. Sorry.
We just still have to send those things.
No, it's my fault on my calendar. I'll pull it up here. Oh, and it's not online, right? I don't think I have my paper with me. So we have council January. What are the dates? Remind me. I know it's the first one is Wednesday, December. The first one in December is on a Wednesday, the 8th.
Yes.
And then we have the 21st.
So the 8th and 21st, I think it would be important to give as much notification for residents to come and make time to actually attend. It is kind of one of the key things in public participation is to give it ample time for people to attend and give them that opportunity to schedule it in. And then also, I believe, give them the option to participate in a hybrid fashion as well to kind of alleviate some of those other barriers that Councillor or Deputy Reeve Clausen mentioned with not necessarily taking the day off work to come in at that point. Maybe a time suggesting, say, 10 a.m. on January 11th might be the best. Just a suggestion.
So in regards to notification, how is that going to work? Because I have I've got a bunch of ratepayers that are really concerned about this, and they don't live anywhere near that road, but they use it all the time.
Perhaps on the county website.
Yes, that would be one part of it, county website. Then we'd probably do some targeting of mail-outs as well. And then we advertise on our social media pages as well.
And then maybe we just do like if people would like to speak, they could like register for a request for comment so that we can manage numbers. And if it's in excess of the fire code, then perhaps we could just bring in like subsets if that were necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we can do that.
I think that makes the hybrid difficult.
Yeah, I
don't think
believe we don't have the recording capability in the ECC, unfortunately. I think this is the only room that we can record all councillors with microphones and stuff like that.
Okay, I'm going to try my motion again. To schedule a public input session for January 11th at 10 a.m. regarding speed limit on Township Road 232. Any questions or discussion? Thank you.
Can we get the entire motion read back just so I'm clear? Because I only heard January that time.
Yes, I would move that we would schedule a public input session regarding speed limit on Township Road 232 for January 11th at 10 a.m. The public input session would follow our current procedure bylaw if we're looking for clarity for that. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll move to 2.38, report on the 2021 municipal election.
Good afternoon, Council. Tracy from Administration. I'm here to present the report on the 2021 municipal election. I must say that I'm happy that that project is completed. So the first part of the report, I included results of the 2017 election versus the 2021 election with the voter turnout. It's based on the 2016 census, so I'm going to say it is very estimated. But if you look at Division 6, in 2017 it was 64%, in 2021 66%, so yeah, consistent. Another thing that is also consistent is how our residents answered question 1 and 2, and also the Senate nominees as well. We are very consistent with the rest of Alberta, and so I also included that in our report. And one of the councillors asked just about could we compare in-house versus a contracted position, which I did. What I learned going through that task is there are so many variables that in the end I recommended that just before the 2025 election that we do that exercise again. We did actually advertise for a returning officer. However, we did not receive adequate experience from the resumes, and that is part of why we did go in-house. I also contacted a few municipalities, and the range of paying was $43 per hour to $62.50 per hour. So if you were to pay the $62.50, that would be comparable to in-house, where the returning officer would delegate tasks to several staff to bring down the costs as well. Municipal Affairs said it takes at least 6 weeks or 225 hours to plan and organize a municipal election. I would disagree with that, especially with this one, with the Senate, the referendum, special ballots were new to us, creating a bylaw. I'd say double. I'm going to double. And based on my conversation with another RO, that's exactly about what they came up with too. So, and then special ballots next in 4 years, 2025, I think we would consider them because I believe we only received 11 ballots in total. And so we'd have to look at the cost of doing that. And so it's just something to consider as well. So the other thing I added to this report is there was also just a comment about pay for our election workers. And so we did contact there's several municipalities. And so I also included that in this report as well. And that's it. Are there any questions? Yes.
It's not really a question. I just wanted to thank you for the job you did. You did an amazing job with this, right from when I first submitted my application right through to the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a team effort. Trust me, I have lots of staff that helped me a tremendous amount. So thanks to them as well.
No question, just comment, I guess, to fellow councillors. As you can see, my division population numbers, I would almost add another 150 to 200 on that right now from 96. So at some point, we're going to have to look at doing some adjustments to the divisions because my populations get just about double everybody else's.
Good thing you work so hard that you're.
And I have some key areas that I wouldn't mind sharing with other people. We can negotiate on that.
So in speaking to GIS, I believe we're going to try to refine the population numbers of each area. We're going to work on that.
That was a consideration, and actually where I moved to from my northern area, because I knew at some point it was going to shrink, and I thought if I want to stay in this game with Division 5, I had to move. So.
I have a question that probably, I don't know if it's the right time to ask it, but did Speargrass become a hamlet yet? They were looking into that.
Oh, I think that's a question for another GM. Did Speargrass become a hamlet? Is a question.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for the question. We're undertaking a hamlet review right now in-house, and then once that happens, then we'll have to modify all of our policies accordingly.
One other thing I didn't notice in here, maybe it was there and I didn't see it, but how many people took advantage of pre-voting? If that was successful or not, I don't know.
Yes. I would absolutely. So we went from, I believe, 1 advance poll in 2017. I'm sorry I missed that. To 3 in 2021. And I would definitely recommend at least 3 advance polls. We did consider, do you keep them all at in council chambers, which we did, or do you rotate them to the different divisions? So that would be another consideration that I would look at in 2025 as well. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're going south. We're going to go earth.
Exactly.
Any other questions regarding the report?
Yes, I never had one person comment about having to come to the county for the advance polls.
Okay, good to know.
Lots of them travel to Strathmore, and it's on the road.
Yeah.
And it's central.
And I had at least 4 come from north of Dallin, and they didn't seem to have a problem coming here. They just made it a trip to Strathmore, Calgary.
And that was part of the reasoning having it here on 2 Saturdays is hoping they might be traveling into the town or city.
I don't know if you'll ever fix it, but I had ratepayers, and I had ratepayers from other divisions come up and tell me they went to Strathmore to vote. They were told they asked who they wanted to vote for, and they told them and sent them out to Rockyford. And I says, but you're not from my division. So I don't know if there's room for advertising better. I know people are people, but yeah, there was a little bit of confusion where to vote.
There was. We had that here as well. Yes, I know on election day, I spoke to the RO in Strathmore, and I dropped off a big county map, and so they put that at the entrance of their election facility, and to help voters. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think it's good to review. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to note, there were 126 advanced ballots and 11 special ballots, and 7 of those special ballots were rejected.
Oh no. Sorry, what is a special ballot?
A special ballot is if you're going to be out of town and you want to vote.
Outside of the advance.
Or if you have accessibility issues and you can't physically access it.
So what you can do is you can request a special ballot, and honestly, Shannon is the expert. She took on special ballots for me, and it's compiled about 6-7 envelopes. In this case, we had 3 ballots. And then you have to photocopy your ID, you have to fill in a form, so the reason a lot were rejected is because people didn't fill them out properly, they didn't make a copy of their ID, they were sent in later than the 18th if they were mailed back, for example. So, yes, so also based on that.
I had a couple, one of the advanced ballots. Time we figured out how long it takes the mail to get them there and back, says you're late.
Yeah.
Is there any consideration to do it online?
No. I don't believe, I'm not aware of any other municipalities that would offer that.
Can you pick them up? Special ballot here at the office? And drop it off here at the office?
We did that as well. So people would come in, Shanna would go out, give them a ballot, they filled it in right then and there and gave it to Shanna. So we did that as well. Part of the challenge this year is we were waiting for the Senate and referendum ballots to be delivered to us. So that was a bit challenging.
Yeah, because there are ratepayers out there with mobility challenges.
Yes. Yeah.
Competence.
Well, thank you for the overview. I think it's good to review how things went, and I like the recommendation to review this again prior to the 2025, and then we can look at what worked well, and if there are considerations like provincial referendum or things like that, then you can take that into consideration at the time. So, any other questions? If not, we could just accept the report for information, and thank you, and to all of your team. I would reiterate, I heard really good comments about how well the election was run, and the information, and how the publicity and advertising was. It was really good. So thank you.
I just have to find the one person that did not vote this time.
Yeah, exactly.
One person.
A motion to accept his information.
Move so.
Councillor Kester has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.39, broadband update.
Good afternoon, Reeve Lincoln Council. My name is Amanda Garner, and I'm the project consultant with Tricon Solutions for the Wheatland County Strategic Broadband Initiative. The broadband project update starts on page 212, of the agenda, and I'm looking for this report to be passed with information. At the top of the report, you will see the project timeline in green. It has been updated to reflect the current status as of this update's submission date. As a key project deliverable, the project team developed a strategic plan that outlines industry standard high-level broadband options that could be available to the county. And the strategic plan is non-technical, and the county will be looking to the RFP respondents to provide the technical information, including proposed network designs, costs, and phasing to support the proposed technical solutions. The Wheatland County draft broadband plan was reviewed by administration and submitted to council as of the July 6th council meeting. The project team is available by request to meet with individual council members to review the strategic plan and individual division reports and answer any questions. The RFP process has the RFP evaluation process has been initiated, and the RFP was posted on the Public Alberta Purchasing Exchange on June 1st, 2021. On July 27th, the June RFP was canceled and the following notice sent to the applicants. Wheatland County Broadband RFP, following the closing of the above noted procurement, the county has identified shortcomings in its procurement documents. In order to ensure a fair and transparent procurement process where all parties are treated fairly and equally, the county has decided to cancel this procurement, and as a result, no contract will be awarded under this procurement. The county will revise its procurement documents and will issue a new procurement opportunity shortly, and it will be posted on the Alberta Purchasing Exchange. We thank you for your interest in this project. On August 24th, the county issued a revised RFP on the Alberta Purchasing Exchange, which addressed the identified shortcomings in the procurement documentation. The revised RFP closed on September 27, 2021, having received one additional RFP response over the previous RFP. In order to receive the most responses possible and to encourage vendors to apply, the team contacted vendors that had expressed interest in responding to advise them that the revised RFP, was open and taking responses, and to follow the RFP process described in the revised RFP. Currently, as a part of the county's RFP process, the team is evaluating the revised RFP responses, and due to the revision and the county's scheduling conflicts and challenges, council will be provided with a recommended option in the March 15 council meeting. This completes the broadband project update. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions regarding the report? A motion to accept as information.
Also a move.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
We'll move to 2.310, rescind IT policy.
Good afternoon, Council. Tracy from Administration. Recently, Administration received legal advice regarding employee purchase programs. Under the MGA, a municipality may only lend money to a non-profit organization or a controlled corporation of a municipality. Legal counsel stated that an employee purchase program, which allows staff a repayment schedule, is considered a loan. Therefore, Administration is recommending that this policy be rescinded. Currently, there's 4 employees that are on a repayment schedule, with the last payment being made September 2022. Administration is recommending that Council honor the arrangements made with the 4 staff, but rescind this policy and end the program. Are there any questions?
Council's wishes.
I'll move we accept this.
So we'll need to move to rescind, or you can just say move the recommendation.
I think I should read. Is an option 1 that the proposed recommendation is accepted? That's what I was planning. Or do you want me to move that it's rescinded?
You can do it either way, just as long as it's clear what you're moving.
Let's make it clear. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
So what we have just done for council is that we're trying to do the dueling screen in front of council. So typically on the right-hand side, there's going to be the motion that typically council should consider reading out word for word. And if it's not a motion that you wouldn't want to do, then don't do it. But that's administration's recommendation would be the wording on the right-hand side of your screen.
It's on the left hand. Tracy just pointed it out to me. Okay, I'm going to move that council rescind the Information Security and Technology Policy 4.3 Employee Purchase Program and honor the arrangements that have been previously made with staff that are currently on the program.
Excellent.
Here ends my motion.
Excellent. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. we will move to 2.311. And just for clarity for that, I'm not picking on you at all. I know we don't always read the motion out. I'm okay as long as I'm clear. Like if you say I'm moving the recommendation is always right kind of at the top of the RFD. You'll see it up there. Then it's super clear. I didn't want there to be any confusion about what we were moving. So I don't know if administration's recommending reading the resolution, we can do that. If it's word for word the recommendation, I'm comfortable if we say as long as administration is okay with it.
We are totally okay with it. The best practice would be to read it word for word. However, if there is, if it's not clear to council, then at that point to ask questions. But typically we have done the resolution.
Like move the recommendation. Yeah. Like when that's in the package, and if it's best practice, we can change that too and start reading it if that is a recommendation.
I would
when we know better, we can do better.
It's best practice.
Okay.
Because if someone's watching it, they don't have
the package right there. Yep,
right?
That's good.
Right.
Yep, excellent.
At least they get to hear exactly what the motion was.
You want them to dual screen our council meetings, watch with the package? Yes.
That's what I do just to better myself. For the
I bet you do. On 0.5 speed so that you really have time to absorb it. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.311.
Good afternoon. Bryce from administration presenting Gleason Library Lease Agreement, RFD. The Gleason Library has been under the care and use of the Gleason and District Library Society for many years, and the current lease expires in December 2021. A new lease agreement has been prepared by the county and signed by the society and is included in the package for review. The agreement is $1 per year commencing immediately for a 5-year term, which is similar to the previous agreement, and also available for renewal. Safety inspection of the premises was conducted in 2019, revealing some minor deficiencies, which have all been corrected at that time. We are recommending 2 resolutions, one for the lease agreement, to accept the lease agreement, and the other resolution is to authorize a letter allowing the Gleason and District Library Society approve the tenancy as required under Clause 26 of the lease agreement. There are tenants that currently live upstairs in the Gleason Library. I am available for any questions. Almost any question.
Good answer.
No kidding.
Good answer. Any other questions?
Well, just for you said there were you did some upgrades of the building. Is that on the county's dime? Like, how does that work? Again, and do we get to the point where we are better off giving the building away as opposed to, because at $1 a year, it takes a long time to get anything back.
As per the agreement and as per past use and operations, the Library Society has done a lot of repairs, and most of the repairs to that building over the years. They've been taking care of that longer than we have owned it. These deficiencies were very minor things regarding some fire code issues, and the county took it upon ourselves. In the interest of the work that they have done in the past, we did some minor improvements. We installed a smoke detector, and we put in some new fire extinguishers. So very minimal, minor stuff. For an example, the Gleason Library has replaced the complete heating system of the library recently, and some other things. So right now, under the lease, the Library Society is responsible for repairs.
Thank you.
And maybe this was in the package, I can't remember. Do the tenants pay rent to the Library Society? Or?
Yes.
I wondered, yeah.
Yes, so
they
through
do
the
income too.
Through the lease, the library does collect the rent. The Library Association, on top of the $1 per year, also is responsible for paying any taxes through this updated lease. That was something that was missing in the former leases, but is required by law that they pay the taxes. So, and this new assessment's being done just for the rental property so that taxes can be properly associated with it.
Any other questions regarding the agreement? I had one question, but I'm just trying to find it.
Just kind of furthering Tom's idea there, why wouldn't they just want the whole building? Why wouldn't they just want the whole building instead of leasing it from us?
Why wouldn't they want the whole building instead of leasing it?
Give them the building.
Yeah, and it's gone.
Well,
they're looking after it. They're doing
over from,
but I mean,
when it was completion days.
we would have legislative requirements, like it would be a
So they
to
use
transfer.
it up downstairs. They use that money to do the upkeep of the building, and yeah, they've over the years kept it in good shape, improved it.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem. I think it was a carryover from when it was a town. I think it was.
There would definitely be benefits of us retaining the asset, ultimately having like ultimate control over that building and the future use of it. You could attempt to try to do something with it if you dispose of that asset, but ultimately, it isn't much of an issue for the county to retain that asset. There may be some major repairs here and there. However, it's probably a wise thing for us to maintain. If council does want more information on that, we can certainly provide that as well.
Yeah, and the library, they do an exceptional job of maintaining and upkeep on it. They have put some significant investments into it, really good care of the facility, and it is a really valuable community service. The only other note I had is I just wanted to emphasize that they do also handle the insurance. So it's really like minimal cost to the county in terms of, long-term expenditures. Any other questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accept a lease agreement with the Gleason and District Library Society for the use of the building locating at 404 Main Street, Gleason, as a public library for a 5-year term commencing immediately at the rate of $1 per day, based on the information as presented in the RFD.
Per year.
What did I say?
Per day.
Per day. Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Outrageous.
You do what you can, right?
Is everybody clear? So you meant $1 per year for clarity.
Yes.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. There's a second recommended resolution.
I move that council authorize administration to send a letter to Gleason and District Library Society approving the tenancy as required under Clause 26 of the lease agreement dated November 16th, 2021.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Just thank you to administration for reviewing these and making sure that we're keeping them up to date and that type of thing. It is appreciated. I know it does take time and we're grateful, so thank you. We'll move to 2.312, snow plowing policy update.
Thank you. Bryce from administration again. We're bringing forward a request for decision to update the county snow plowing policy. Recently, during the Spring 2021 Rural Municipalities of Alberta Convention, it was identified that defining a timeline for snow removal was an important factor in mitigating liability. So that is one of the updates that we undertook in this policy. The second major update to this policy would be the inclusion of the lakes of Muirfield. The road section owned by the county is now also mapped out and put into the policy. Those were the two major purposes of this particular update to the policy. I am available for any questions.
Any questions regarding the policy?
Can we do it in 72 hours?
Yes, this was
Got rid of a grader.
Yes, this was reviewed by multiple members of the public works staff, and to ensure that this was an adequate timeline.
So a few years ago, about 4, I have ratepayers, never seen the snow plow. Division, never seen it all year long. Every second day we were getting a storm event and they just start over again. And they just couldn't do it. We've added 2 graders since. We've taken 1 off since. I don't think we can commit to 72 hours. We get a winter like that again, you'll not do it. Unless you keep going and you don't start over from the beginning. But the thing of it is, in the county, our priority roads always come first. You got a snow event, you do the priority, which is the school buses, and every division probably has somebody that's expecting a baby next week, or maybe they have health issues, they have to have access to the road. You try and keep them roads clear too. So I would caution on the 72 hours. I would go 140 hours and to see how it works. But to go 72, I think it stays like this, well, no problem. But we got an event like that.
Just further to Glenn's, I noticed in here you've got identified, to clear identified roadways within 72 hours. So the identified roadways, I'm going to take a guess, are not all the roads in the county. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct. Through the chair, that is correct, yes.
Okay, so then my question would be exactly the same as Glenn's, are you certain you can do the identified roadways within 72 hours? Because you don't want to promise something that you can't deliver.
We have, in reviewing this, talked to our roads manager. He did feel confident that he could clear the identified roadways within 72 hours. And no, that's 72 hours following the completion of a snow event. There's also provisions in there for kind of larger than normal snow events that it may be longer than that, but under typical circumstances, he felt confident that he could clear them within 72 hours easily.
So does he have a line in there for multiple snow events?
It says under extreme weather conditions, the GM or delegate may determine that additional time for snow clearing is required, and notifications will be posted on the county website advising of delays. I think that covers you for.
I hear what you're saying. But when my ratepayer is here, that's going to be 72 hours, and it turns into be 3 weeks. They're not going to be looking at the website getting updates.
Or you're
going to be phoning.
Are you talking ratepayers of like a hamlet, or like a ratepayer in a rural area?
Ratepayers that live on a main road.
So can you identify, or can you define identified county roadways? What falls under identified county roadways? Because that's, I think, what we need to differentiate.
There's some vehicle per day limits on some of those, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fleshed out between arterial, collector, and local, and then there's a differentiation for lower standard county roads. So is it...
Just telling you, we had half a division, never seen a grader, and it was documented by Public Works.
Yeah, it looks like roads for the community shown in Schedule A, which is primarily ignoring the fact that a couple of our sort of recognized hamlets are not necessarily qualified as hamlets by municipal affairs at this point, but like what we would consider, let's say, densely populated communities, let's put it that way, are all delineated in Appendix A.
Which is funny because when you go to like the towns and the cities, they do not get that level of service that we give to those hamlets, to be honest. Like the hamlets get a better service than any city or town would ever give them. What Glenn's asking is about the rural roads, the higher traveled roads.
Yeah, our arterial roads.
We need to identify, I think that we need to have something that identifies some key roads when they're going to get done within a time frame. Because, yeah, this is mostly hamlet crew work that we're looking at, which is not what you guys represent. Yeah.
Through the chair, I would agree with that. That is a discussion that we had as we were reviewing and updating this policy. The main purpose for this particular update was to put the timeline in there because there are some liability concerns of not having a timeline in the policy. Although all of the other comments are recognized, and we are planning over the next number of months, certainly before the 2022-2023 snow year, to update this policy even further to make it more clear and a little more delineated in terms of exactly what roads we're talking about, including maybe some additional maps of the county or some more thorough definitions. So that is planned. This one specifically was to just get this timeline on here and just make some other smaller cleanup items, but the larger review is pending.
So, just so I'm clear, are the identified roads only the ones that are on these maps here?
For the hamlets, yes. The other roads are covered within the text. Yeah.
What page? Can you tell me what page, please?
Sure.
246 and 247.
So 246 has the definitions, and then through 247 it talks about how they will be treated.
Could you tell us what kinds of, like, you're trying to protect us against future lawsuits? What would they be if we didn't have the 72 hours in here?
So what was brought forward as the liability concern is that if you have a policy for snow removal and you don't set a timeline, that the expectation could be that immediately those roads would be cleared. So if anybody, for example, had an incident on a roadway an hour after a snow event, they could come and technically come to the county. So the recommendation, not only through the RMA presentation, but also through some legal review, identified that this was to mitigate that liability.
I've seen some times where the hamlet has been plowed, and then the main road leading to the number one highway, for instance, has not been sanded or plowed. So I'm sure that's what you're going to work on, is kind of make sure that those things are done in conjunction. So we get this all the time, especially where I'm living, is our county does a really good job. They hit Rocky View and they think it's our problem, or they hit
or a provincial road,
Boker Stephen or whatever. Those roads aren't done as well, but it's, yeah. So I think this needs more work, and I think you're on the right path there for sure. But if we need to pass just this part right now, I'm okay with that, knowing what's coming. So.
Yeah, or we plow our road and they turn off on the 564 and they're stuck there. Same thing.
Yeah, we get the
talked about this a couple of years ago. Ben was here, that same snowfall. They plow the 564, get out to his place, and the 56 wasn't plowed, and same thing. Or the other way around. That, I think, has been remediated, having the same contractors out there now. But I think 72 hours, I think, is too short. Nice to. Or say, oh, this is a big snowfall, we're going to change it to 128.
I think it would be good. Personally, I'm supportive of what administration is bringing forward, and then perhaps if administration operationally finds that it's not an achievable number, we could bring back a policy. It's simple enough to revise a policy if it's not feasible, recognizing we go through patterns where I know exactly what you're saying. But as Councillor Laprice read, there is provision in 2 spots within the policy for exceptions, and just with the provision that it being at the end of a snowfall, because I think frequently we've had like a snowfall event that is multi-day, and then obviously that extends that for 72 hours after that. There is the, sorry, I did read it in 2 spots. So the sort of fourth section down on page 247 also kind of as a caveat to recognize that there will be unusual and varying circumstances for which operations staff must use discretion and judgment in the application of this policy, plus the verbiage that Councillor Laprise already has read. So I think we do have some caveats in there that do protect us, but I think what this does is cover off that liability that was identified just in terms of managing expectations. Councillor Larson.
Also, you likely have the ability to get the plow operators to do overtime or
absolutely
bring in extra shifts.
Through the reeve, yeah, that is a possibility when required. And also through the reeve, if we do have roads that we're noticing aren't getting paved or aren't getting paved for a significant amount of time, we definitely want to hear about that. However, in talking with our operations manager, he does feel confident that he can get the roads plowed within that timeline under typical snowstorm circumstances. But also to your point, if we do run into issues, then we can revisit the policy, and we would want to do that for sure.
I would prefer we would add on a little bit more time and review it shorter if we can, instead of having it shorter and reviewing it, making it longer. One point. Under your procedure, it says snow plowing operations on gravel surface roads will commence 24 hours after 15 centimeters. I think previously we will not start plowing snow until after the snowfall event is stopped. So if we say at 15 centimeters, 24 hours, and the event is still on, we got a 3-day storm. I think in the past we've kept our graders home if it's unsafe for them to be out there. So here that makes no mention of that. So if we say after the snowfall event, then I would think it's more safe usually to send them out.
The safety is recognized in point 4 under procedure. All equipment being utilized for plowing and sanding operations will be called off the roads during unsafe conditions as determined by the GM or delegate. Because I agree that's important that we're not prioritizing the plowing over the safety of our team.
Right.
So that provision is there, and I know you will prioritize the safety for sure. So that is there.
I look at it from the eyes of my ratepayers. They're going to see that line, and that's what's going to stick in there. They're not going to read the whole thing. Now, not all of them are like that, but some will see that, and that's what they're going to remember.
Can we get some high level, recognizing that you're still working on it, but just ballpark, what are you thinking for plowing timeline for arterial collector local roads? Like, where would that fall? Which of those would fall within that 72-hour window?
Currently, the understanding is all of them.
All of them, okay.
Yeah, and we did, during the discussion and determination of the 72-hour period, we did put in a cushion, I'll call it, based on the actual estimation of what it would take to complete either the Hamlet community program or the rural roads or arterial road programs. We did add some hours to that based on the initial determination of how long it would take to run the routes. However, of course, we're open to any suggestions.
I think some key takeaways is if any division, if there are roads that are not seeing timely plowing, then communicate, either have the ratepayers communicate that directly to administration, or if you want to do it on behalf of your ratepayers. If there's issues that we're hearing about in terms of the timeliness within the policy, we have to make sure we bring that forward to administration so that they're aware. Yeah, I appreciate the work that's been done on this.
Just to offer one more point to add to Brad's point of we're bringing something more substantial in the future, we're reviewing this more thoroughly in the future. This policy will be, you'll see this policy brought forward more and more often as we take on new roads, FAC new roads. We want to keep that updated, make sure that it's included in the policy. And a good example would be Muirfield is a perfect example of a road that was new to us, so we created a new map and we put it in the policy. So all of those updates. So I think you're going to see this policy more often than maybe previously, just to add to the potential for corrections or updates. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve the amendments made to the Public Works Policy 9.3.7 dated November 16th, 2021.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Oh. All in favor. Sorry, I missed. Excellent. Thank you. Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.313, access easement. $260, I think.
Okay, so Bryce again from administration. In 2013, Wheatland County acquired roll number 717000. The vendor was the owner of the adjacent parcel, 7200. And the terms of the purchase and sale agreement included the county granting an easement for access across the newly acquired parcel, which is landlocked. In 2021, we acquired the county acquired roll 718000 from the province, across which both the county and the owners of roll 712000 must cross to access their parcels. The access across the provincially owned parcel was not a registered easement, and now that the county owns it, staff has determined it is necessary to expand the current easement with the adjacent owner to amend it to include both county-owned parcels. We're recommending that we approve, that council approves an access and easement agreement granting access through this location.
Council's wishes.
Yes, it is.
Council's wishes.
I'll read it. I'll make a motion that council approve the access easement agreement granting access to the owner of roll number 720000 across rolls number 717000 and 718000, all within North 2826 18 West of the 4th, based on the information contained in the RFD, period.
Okay, now repeat Peter Pepper Picture.
Want me to say it backwards?
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.1. Correspondence from Kneehill County, a thank you from Drumheller Area Health Foundation, Fortis Alberta correspondence, and Wheatland Regional Corporation correspondence. There is an invitation from Fortis, and I don't think we need to discuss the Kneehill or Drumheller Health. So the invitation will be forthcoming, it says, so we don't need to address that. Wheatland Regional Corporation, I don't know if anybody from the board wants to speak to that. The information is there.
I can speak to the WRC document that's been discussed at the board with Hazar leaving and putting their notification forth to do that, and it's been completed. The board feels that there's an imbalance of power, I would say, and the county has 2 members, so they're talking about going down. I know there may be some merit to actually doing something different than this, but I wanted it to come forth that we to our council, and I hopefully that the village partners take it back to theirs to see what is our council's want. I basically said at the board, it's not my place to say whether or not we should have one or two here. It's my council's to do that. So, Wheatland County was a major funder in this project with some out of reserves. Water for Life was a major funder. We're no longer in the building stages of everything. We're now in the operational stages. There will be no more further building that at this time, I don't think, with Hazard having left. So, I think of.
Well, I think we should probably get a direct administration to have our lawyers just take a look at what happens with the structures, that the way the voting structure is. What happens? I don't see it as a problem because it is basically an operations, but I'm not a lawyer. What happened? What happens if we give up one of? We have two votes. If we give up one of them, what are the ramifications of that? And I think that just needs to be fleshed out a little bit. So.
Yes, so I had been chatting with Brad and Bryce a little bit about this one as well. As for board structure, we definitely think that it wouldn't be advisable from a governance perspective just to have 3 board members, and 3 board members being 3 votes on a board. We would probably think the minimum should be 5 and perhaps maybe even 7. Similar to this council or the villages of the 5. We just think going down to a 3-member board may limit the discussion and variety of input from members. So we had talked about a couple of different options, and we can bring something back on the dissolution of some shares, but kind of administration's initial thoughts on this one were that you could either do members at large, you could do a member from each municipality, 2 members at large, have the board obviously evaluate the members at large if they have that criteria. You could send 3 members from the county and 2 members from each village. Realistically, there are a lot of options, but we can definitely look into the ramifications of having a share dissolved.
Something that's a concern of mine too is the asset management of this moving forward. The recognition of that debt, that in 50 years' time, the replacement value of some of this stuff has to be realistically looked at. And that can be a challenge for a small board because your costs are really, especially with the villages, they don't have a lot of money to deal with. But at some point, we have to look at it seriously as a board to keep it operable.
I really do believe that is a great discussion to have at the board level, that they do asset management for their asset. Obviously, they have a very large, significant asset that they need to manage. However, that's not my spot to say how they manage that asset. However, it is pertinent to us, and as they do provide potable water to 2 hamlets of ours.
Councillor Kister.
If we have extra board members, who's going to pay them? That's a major consideration, being that the board doesn't pay anybody now. And if the county pays them, perception will be they're county reps. Well, I think I can understand the 3, but how do you get to 5, and the logistics of it is one thing. The county putting in the money, and the county, the perceived money that we put in, and who's going to manage that. That was and is supposed to be taken care of by the preferred shares. Standard put in per capita probably way more than the county put in. Well, maybe not way more. They put in a significant portion, and they are covered off by the preferred shares. So the county has to protect our contribution by the preferred shares. There's no other way to get that money out of the corporation if the corporation fails, because I believe in the bylaws it says it's shared equally. it's sold, everybody gets a third share. It doesn't matter how many shares you have, but the proceeds from the sale is between the partners. So I think we got to make sure now that phase 3 is done, or is it 3 or 3, that we get our preferred shares all on a line and get them sewed up. It is substantial, no two ways about it, but that's the only way we can afford to protect our contributions. Yeah, 5 members has a merit, but who's going to pay for it? Unless the board pays everyone's per diem, and it's just added on to the price of the water. There's no other way.
That's a good point you raised, Glenn, but I think probably what Brian was referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but when you have a group, a committee, or anybody, and it's less than 5 people, typically it's a very ineffective committee because you get into what's known as groupthink right away. There's no exchange of ideas and stuff. So 5 to 7 is generally considered to be the optimal size for groups. So I think I'm going to assume that's what you were kind of referring to.
Yes. And ultimately that is a board decision. These are just ideas that administration kind of thought about. However, the board chooses to compensate those members. Ultimately, that's up to the board. Ultimately, they need to raise those funds somehow, through water rates, through labor rates, through a membership fee. I have no idea. That's ultimately something of the board, not for me to kind of determine. But those would kind of just be our recommendations in general. But we also could, and if we do have council direction, take a look at that dissolution of share as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of administration bringing back maybe an RFD just with some options, and then council could consider those. We could look at cost ramifications, different models that then the board members might be able to propose to the WRC. I think there's a lot of considerations. One thing that the letter from the WRC, I don't think it recognized, is that while the villages just have, like Rocky Ford and Standard, just have like one community essentially serviced by water, Wheatland does have 2 with some potential increase for that. And given that I haven't like compared number of residents and that type of thing like between them, but there are several considerations. I would appreciate seeing some information from administration, recognizing that there are some fairly substantive documents around the corporation. We want to make sure that we are legally sound in whatever is happening going forward, for sure. Yep.
So one thing we could consider too is I think there are some individuals that get their water from this. So yes, maybe they would be, by virtue of the fact that they're getting water from this, they might be willing to volunteer to be a member at large because it's in their best interest. I think that's something to look at. So I think my cousin might be one of them.
That's a good point. Yeah, they would be Wheatland County residents typically as well. So that would be another sort of section of Wheatland County that is served, and the bulk water as well. I haven't seen a breakdown, but typically I would think would be serving agricultural producers and our fire departments and things like that. So, Deputy Reeve Clausen. He was waiting.
There was a mention of preferred shares, and I believe we've discussed that before at council. So, with the new councillors here, maybe we have to go through that whole process of, because there's quite a bit to this, where we've got, how we've got here, and there's some different opinions, I guess, of how it's got to where it is.
It might be a good committee of the whole discussion just to review, because there is a lot of history and documentation and that type of thing. Administration did an excellent job of compiling like all the historical documents. It might be good to get those so that all of council has that, and then just to walk through some of the context.
Yes, and just to kind of revisit the investment in the share piece of it. So we had an older investment policy that was updated near maybe midsummer or just before the council recess in June of 2021. And our policy would not allow us to have any sort of shares, however we did have some. So our investment policy got overhauled with the transition to an investment broker that we use for investments, and we did add a piece in there that we can own share any type of share within I forget the exact wording, I have to go to that policy, but now we can. Ultimately, if we do want to get preferred shares from the Wheatland Regional Corporation, I believe we could ask for them. We just haven't went through that process yet.
Somebody prepared to make a motion kind of around the discussion that we've had, just directing administration to bring back an RFD with options and perhaps a recommendation to council with options for consideration.
That sounded like a motion.
I don't want to make it. If somebody wants to make that motion.
I will make that motion.
Councillor Eichert has moved.
Consideration or the knowledge that it's for information only, because the final decision, I believe, rests with the board of WRC.
Yeah, I guess it would just be for council discussion, and then the board members could take information around that discussion back to the board. Any other questions or discussion?
I guess one other comment to your queries, Amber. Last water rates, not water usage I've seen, standard is well over a third of the usage. Rocky Ford's just below, and Galician is very close to the same as Rocky Ford. So it's basically a third.
Okay, that's good.
The infrastructure stretches the longest for Wheatland County. Stretches from Galician to Rosebud. Standard, just the reservoirs, and Rocky Ford, just the reservoirs and into Rocky Ford. So not equal by any.
Yeah, and because I understand Standard has some industrial use as well that's on, which could increase their usage. And it may take some time to see the data once Rosebud, like once we have some historical data for Rosebud. So yeah, excellent points. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Before we move into our closed session, CAO Henderson did share that today is sort of our last council day, that Margaret is with the county as our executive assistant. And I know probably all of us, maybe even the new councillors, have worked a lot with Margaret, and she's done phenomenal work for the county. I know she has helped all of us multiple times, and just helps represent us very well in the correspondence that she drafts for us and the minutes that she's prepared for us through the years. We're going to miss her. I think all of us will miss her. So just CAO Henderson, if you could pass on thanks from council through you to Margaret, and let her know that we'll miss her, and that we hope that we still see her smiling face sometimes. So she was an integral part of our team. So thank you.
Yep.
Have her take 4 attaboys out of petty cash.
Yes.
Can I get a new chair?
That's pretty generous.
I don't know. I think you're exactly where you should be.
Councillor Bigger.
I'll move the correspondence.
It's a totally different perspective.
Scott's got my good side.
Councillor Bigger has moved to accept the correspondence as information. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. I will move us into closed session under FOIP section 21.
We have a little break.
Oh.
Little break?
Sorry? Oh.
So there was a request for a 5-minute break. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We will, before we do anything, we will recess for 5 minutes. My apologies. We'll reconvene at, you know what, I'll give you 7 minutes, 2:55.